The stars remembered what the living had forgotten. 10,000 years ago, humanity had burned across the galaxy like a fever. They had fought a war so terrible that entire species still told stories about it to their children. They called it the Crucible. In those dark days, human warships had turned 17 star systems into graveyards. They had cracked moons like eggs and boiled oceans into steam. Whole civilizations had begged for mercy, and humanity had answered with fire. When the war finally ended, humanity stood alone among the ruins. They looked at the blood on their hands. They looked at the silent worlds they had created. And something inside them broke. The survivors made a promise. Never again. They would never again become the monsters they had been. They dismantled their great warships and melted them down. They sealed the factories where weapons were born. They locked away the knowledge of war in vaults that could only be opened by 1,000 different keys. Then they changed themselves. Over many generations, humans rewrote their own nature. They used medicine and teaching and culture to remove the love of violence from their hearts. They became gentle. They became kind. They became everything they had not been during the Crucible. The Terran Concord, as they now called themselves, kept only 12 worlds. They declared themselves observers. They would watch the galaxy. They would study it. They would help where they could. But they would never again raise a weapon in anger. At first, the other species of the galaxy did not believe it. They watched humanity with fear and suspicion. They waited for the trick, for the trap, for the return of the old monsters. But years passed, then decades, then centuries, and humanity remained peaceful. Fear turned to confusion. Confusion turned to amusement. Amusement turned to contempt. New empires rose in the spaces humanity had left empty. The Vethkai dominions spread across 1,000 worlds, their hive minds working as one. The crystalline hegemony built cities of living glass. The Rorvan Confederacy traded in secrets and lies. None of them remembered the Crucible as anything but old stories. None of them had ever seen humanity fight to these new powers. Humans were a curiosity. They were like a great beast that had pulled out its own teeth and claws. They were useful sometimes. Human doctors were the best in the galaxy. Human diplomats could solve problems that had lasted for centuries. Human scientists made discoveries that changed everything, but they were not dangerous. Not anymore. Everyone knew this. Ambassador Sarah Chun had spent her entire life proving this truth. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served the Terran diplomatic corps for 40 years. In that time, she had stopped 3 wars. She had saved millions of lives. She had earned the respect of species who looked down on humans as weak and foolish. Sarah believed in the path her ancestors had chosen. Violence solved nothing. Peace required courage. The strong did not need to prove their strength by hurting others. She lived by these words. She had built her whole life around them. On the day, everything changed. Sarah was at the Galactic Council on the station called Harmony Point. It was a place where all species came to talk and trade, and settle their differences with words instead of weapons. Sarah loved it there. It was proof that civilization could work. She was drinking tea in her quarters. When the message came, the words on her screen were simple. A Terran colony world called New Helsinki had gone silent. All communication had stopped. The last message had been a single word, repeated over and over. Help. Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. New Helsinki was a farming world on the edge of human space. 4 million people lived there. Families, children, people who wanted nothing but to grow their crops and live their quiet lives. She made calls. She asked questions. The answers made the cold weight grow heavier. The Vethkai Dominion had wanted the asteroid belt near New Helsinki. There were valuable minerals there. The humans had been told to leave. They had been given 7 days to abandon their homes, their farms, everything they had built over 200 years. The colonists had refused. New Helsinki was their home. They had nowhere else to go. They had asked for help from the Terran Concord, but help would take time to arrive. They had asked the Galactic Council to intervene, but the Council moved slowly. The Vethkai did not wait. Sarah took the fastest ship she could find. It took 3 days to reach New Helsinki. 3 days of hoping. 3 days of praying to gods she did not really believe in. When she arrived, she found a world of bones. The Vethkai had used something called the consumption swarm. It was a living weapon, a cloud of tiny creatures designed to break down organic matter. Everything organic, plants, animals, people. The swarm ate them all and turned them into soup that the Vethkai could harvest later. Sarah walked through the capital city. The buildings still stood. The streets were clean, but there was no one left. She found a school. Inside, there were tiny skeletons still sitting at their desks. The children had died so fast they had not even had time to run. Some of them were still holding pencils in their bone fingers. She found a hospital. The doctors and patients had died together. A mother's skeleton was curled around her baby's skeleton, as if she had tried to protect her child with her own body. She found homes where families had died in their beds. She found parks where people had died mid-step. 4 million people, gone in hours. The Vethkai had not seen it as murder. They had seen it as clearing land. Sarah stood in the middle of the empty city and screamed. She screamed until her throat was raw. She screamed for the children who would never grow up. She screamed for the parents who could not save them. She screamed for a galaxy that had looked at humanity's gentleness and seen only weakness. When she was done screaming, she wiped her eyes and returned to her ship. She had work to do. The beast had slept for 10,000 years. It had dreamed of peace and love and kindness. It had believed that violence was behind it forever, but now its children were dead. And somewhere deep inside humanity, in a place that medicine and teaching and culture had never quite reached, something old and terrible was beginning to wake up. The galaxy had forgotten what humanity truly was. It was about to remember. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood before the Vethkai Overmind and demanded answers. The Overmind was not one creature, but many. Thousands of Vethkai bodies linked together by thought and chemistry, forming a single vast intelligence. It lived in a chamber the size of a small city, a mountain of flesh and chitin and clicking limbs. When it spoke, its words came as bursts of scent and sound that Sarah's translator turned into cold, flat sentences. "You come to complain," the Overmind said. "This is expected. This is meaningless." Sarah's hand shook. She had seen horrors in her diplomatic career. She had witnessed cruelty and greed and stupidity in 100 forms. But nothing had prepared her for New Helsinki. Nothing had prepared her for the bones of children. "You killed 4 million people," she said. "Civilians, farmers, children." "We cleared the land," the Overmind replied. "The resources in that system now belong to the Dominion. This is efficient. This is correct. They were living beings. They had the right to exist." The Overmind made a sound that might have been laughter. "Rights are what the strong give to the weak. You are weak. You have been weak for 10,000 years. You do not fight. You do not threaten. You do not act. This is known throughout the galaxy. Your protest is noted and disregarded." Sarah felt something shift inside her. Some wall that she had built over a lifetime of patience and diplomacy. Some belief that words could solve anything. "We will take this to the Galactic Council," she said. "There will be consequences." "There will be words," the Overmind said. "There are always words. And then there will be nothing, because you are observers. You watch. You do not act. Go home, human. Mourn your dead. Build monuments to them if you wish. But do not pretend you will do anything else. We both know the truth of what you are." Sira said nothing more. She turned and walked away from the Overmind's chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. Behind her, the Overmind had already forgotten her. She was not important. Humanity was not important. They were simply another weak species to be used and discarded. The Overmind was about to learn how wrong it was that Sira returned to Earth. She requested an emergency meeting with the Terran Council, the 12 leaders who guided human civilization. They gathered in the ancient chamber where humanity had made its most important decisions for thousands of years. Sira showed them everything. She showed them images of New Helsinki. She showed them the bones. She showed them the empty cities and the silent farms. She showed them what the Vethkai had done to 4 million of their people. The council members watched in silence. Some wept, some turned away. All of them felt something break inside them, just as Sira had. When the images ended, Sira stood before them. "For 10,000 years we have been peaceful," she said. "We dismantled our weapons. We taught ourselves to be gentle. We believed that if we showed the galaxy kindness, it would show us kindness in return. We were wrong." She paused. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "The Vethkai killed our children because they knew we would do nothing. For 10,000 years, we have proven them right. Every time a species threatened us, we talked. We negotiated. We compromised. We told ourselves this was wisdom. We told ourselves this was strength." She shook her head. "It was not strength. It was fear. We were afraid of what we used to be. We were afraid of the monsters we had been during the Crucible. So we chained those monsters and threw away the key. And now the galaxy knows we are chained. Now they kill our children for land they want. Now they laugh at our protests." Sira looked at each council member in turn. "I am done proving them right. I am done watching our people die while we make speeches. My sister lived on New Helsinki. My nephews, 8 and 11 years old, died there. I will not stand here and talk about peace while their bones lie unburied on a dead world." The oldest council member, a man named Thomas Way, spoke softly. "What are you asking us to do, Ambassador?" "Open the vaults," Sira said. "Wake the beast. Show the galaxy that humanity's peace was a choice, not a weakness. And show them what happens when someone makes us choose differently." The chamber was silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. 10,000 years of tradition pressed down on them. 10,000 years of believing they had left violence behind forever. Then Thomas Way stood up. "I was taught that our ancestors sealed the weapons because they were ashamed of what they had done," he said. "I was taught that we chose peace because violence solved nothing. I believed these things. I still believe them." He paused. "But I also believe that when someone murders your children, peace is no longer possible. The Vethkai have forced us to make a choice we never wanted to make. They have forced us to remember what we truly are." He looked at Sira. "I vote to open the vaults." One by one, the other council members stood. One by one, they voted. The decision was unanimous. That night, for the first time in 10,000 years, the sealed doors began to open. On Mars, ancient shipyards that had been silent for millennia came back to life. On Neptune's moons, weapons platforms that had orbited as museums began their activation sequences. On 100 worlds and 1,000 hidden places, humanity's sleeping arsenal stirred. The galaxy did not notice. The Vethkai did not notice. They were busy celebrating their easy victory, their simple conquest of a weak and harmless species. They had no idea what they had awakened deep in the vaults. Old machines began to hum. Old computers began to think. Old weapons began to charge. And somewhere, in a room that had been sealed for 100 centuries, a message appeared on a dusty screen. Humanity calls, the beast awakens. The stars remembered what the living had forgotten. Soon, the living would remember too, and the galaxy would learn to be afraid. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was 127 years old. Human medicine had advanced far beyond what the galaxy knew. People lived long lives now, healthy and strong until the very end. But Tanaka carried a weight that no medicine could lift. She was the last of the rememberers. Every generation, a small group of humans was chosen to study the old ways. They learned about the Crucible. They trained in the ancient war simulations. They kept the knowledge of violence alive, hidden, just in case. Most people did not know they existed. Most people did not want to know. Tanaka had spent a century praying she would never need to use what she knew. She had watched younger rememberers die peacefully, their knowledge never needed. She had hoped she would be the same. When the council summoned her, she wept. "I knew this day would come," she said to Thomas Way. "I always knew. I just hoped it would not be in my lifetime. Can it be done?" Way asked, "Can we fight again?" Tanaka looked at him with eyes that had seen a century of false peace. "We never stopped being able to fight. We only stopped wanting to. The skills are in the vaults. The weapons are in the vaults. The ships are in the vaults. Everything our ancestors sealed away is waiting for us. How long? 6 months to build a fleet. A year to build an army. Our ancestors were thorough. They did not destroy anything. They only hid it." Way nodded slowly. "Then begin." Tanaka did not hesitate. She had been waiting for this moment her entire life, dreading it and preparing for it in equal measure. She sent the signal to the other rememberers. She activated the ancient protocols. She opened doors that had been sealed for 10,000 years. The Forge Worlds came alive. On Mars, the great shipyards had been preserved as museums. Tourists had walked through them for centuries, marveling at the ancient war machines. Now the tourists were gone, and the machines were being rebuilt. Workers who had spent their lives building farming equipment found that they knew how to build weapons instead. The knowledge was in the vaults, but it was also in their blood. Their ancestors had built ships that could destroy worlds. Their hands remembered. On Europa, the weapons factories reopened. For 10,000 years, they had made medical equipment and food processors. Now they made things that killed. The workers did not question it. They had seen the images from New Helsinki. They had seen the bones. Across human space, everything changed. Scientists who had studied stars now studied how to destroy them. Engineers who had built bridges now built cannons. Doctors who had healed the sick now learned how to make the enemy sick. Instead, it should have felt wrong. It should have felt like a betrayal of everything humanity had become. It did not. There was something in humans that remembered. Something old. Something that slept but never died. When the call came, that something woke up. People who had never raised a hand in anger found themselves training with weapons. People who had spent their lives growing flowers found themselves loading missiles. They did not become monsters. They became something stranger. They became peaceful people who had chosen to do terrible things. They became gentle souls who had decided to kill. And that, Tanaka knew, was far more dangerous than any natural warrior. A monster kills because it wants to. A human kills because it has to. And a human who has decided they have to kill is the most dangerous thing in the universe. The Vethkai noticed the activity in human space. Their spies sent reports of strange energy signatures, of ships being built, of weapons being made. The Overmind considered this information carefully. They are playing at war, it concluded. They have not fought in 10,000 years. They have no warriors. They have no military tradition. They are bluffing, hoping to scare us into giving back what we have taken. The Overmind was half right. Humanity had no military tradition. They had no standing army. They had spent 100 centuries teaching themselves that violence was wrong. But the Overmind made a mistake that would cost the Dominion everything. It thought the people who had chosen peace were incapable of war. It did not understand that people who had chosen peace understood war better than anyone. They knew its cost. They knew its horror. They had looked into the darkness and turned away. But they had not forgotten what the darkness looked like. 6 months after the Council's vote, Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the TNV Retribution. It was the first human warship built in 10,000 years. It was beautiful and terrible, sleek and deadly. A machine designed for one purpose. Around it floated 39 more ships. A tiny fleet by galactic standards. The Vethkai had thousands of warships. They had centuries of experience. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. Humanity had 40 ships and a burning anger that 10,000 years had not cooled. Tanaka looked at the stars. Somewhere out there was Chiraxus, a Vethkai border world. 800 enemy ships defended it. The Overmind had sent them there as a show of strength, daring the humans to attack. Admiral, or communications officer, said, "The fleet is ready. All ships report battle stations manned." Tanaka nodded. She thought of New Helsinki. She thought of the bones of children. She thought of her own grandchildren, safe on Earth, sleeping peacefully while their grandmother prepared to burn worlds. "Open a channel to the fleet," she said. The channel opened. 40 ships waited for her words. "For 10,000 years we slept," Tanaka said. "For 10,000 years we dreamed of peace. We thought we could hide from what we are. We were wrong. Today, we remember. Today, we remind the galaxy why it once feared humanity. Today, we wake up." She paused, jumped to Chiraxus. The 40 ships vanished into slipspace. When they emerged, 800 Vethkai warships were waiting. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, not a single Vethkai ship remained. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. The galaxy watched the battle recordings in disbelief. Military analysts from 100 species studied what had happened, trying to understand how 40 ships had destroyed 800. They could not explain it. They could not comprehend it. They had never seen anything like it. But deep in the oldest archives, in records that had not been opened for 10,000 years, there were stories of a species that had once burned 17 star systems. A species that had made gods weep and empires beg. Those stories were not myths. They were warnings, and humanity was just getting started. The Vethkai Overmind had ruled the Dominion for 3,000 years. It had consumed 100 species. It had won 10,000 battles. It had never known fear. Now it learned. After the massacre at Chiraxus, the Overmind sent a larger fleet. 2,000 ships, the pride of the Dominion, carrying weapons that had crushed empires. They found the human fleet waiting for them in empty space between the stars. The battle lasted 1 hour. When ended, half the Vethkai fleet was debris. The other half was running. The humans had lost 8 ships. The Overmind felt something it had never felt before. A cold sensation in its vast consciousness. A whisper of doubt. For the first time in its existence, it wondered if it had made a terrible mistake. It sent 3 fleets next. Then 5, then 10. The humans met them all. And the humans won. Military experts across the galaxy tried to understand what was happening. The humans should not be able to fight like this. They had no experience. They had no training. They had been peaceful for 10,000 years, but the experts missed something important. They thought war was about practice. They thought it was about tradition and experience and learning how to fight. They were wrong. War was about willingness to do terrible things. And humans who had spent 10,000 years choosing not to do terrible things understood that choice better than anyone. The Vethkai fought because fighting was their nature. They did not question it. They did not think about it. They simply swarmed and killed and consumed. Humans fought because they had decided to fight. Every soldier, every pilot, every engineer had looked at the bones of New Helsinki and made a choice. They had chosen to become killers. And people who choose to become killers, who understand exactly what they are doing, are far more dangerous than those who kill without thinking. Admiral Tanaka's fleet cut through Vethkai space like fire through dry grass. Human soldiers landed on enemy worlds and took them in days. Human engineers built weapons that the Vethkai had never imagined. Human doctors found weaknesses in Vethkai biology that the Vethkai themselves did not know existed. It was not just the technology. It was not just the tactics. It was something deeper. Humans were creative. They did not fight the same way twice. They invented new strategies in the middle of battles. They turned defeats into victories through sheer stubbornness. They did things that no logical species would ever attempt, and somehow those things worked. The Vethkai could not adapt. Their hive minds were powerful but rigid. They thought as one, which meant they could only think in one way. When the humans did something unexpected, the entire Dominion stumbled. Captain Marcus Cole led a company of 300 soldiers against a Vethkai fortress that held 10,000. Everyone said it was suicide. Marcus said it was Tuesday. He did not attack the fortress directly. Instead, he found the water supply and poisoned it with a chemical that only affected Vethkai biology. By the time the defenders realized what was happening, half of them were dead, and the other half were too sick to fight. Marcus lost 12 soldiers. The Vethkai lost everything. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent 30 years treating children with rare diseases. Now she led a team that created biological weapons targeted specifically at Vethkai nervous systems. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself it was for the children of New Helsinki. At night, she did not sleep, but she did not stop working. This was what the galaxy did not understand about humanity's return to war. It was not joyful. It was not triumphant. Every human soldier carried the weight of what they were doing. They knew they were killing thinking beings. They knew they were causing pain and death. They did it anyway, because they had decided that some things were worth that price. After 8 months, the Terran fleet reached the Vethkai homeworld of Kethvar Prime. The Overmind had gathered every remaining ship, every last warrior, every weapon the Dominion possessed. It was ready to fight to the death. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the enemy fleet on the tactical display. She was no longer a diplomat. She had not been a diplomat since New Helsinki. Now she was something else. Something harder. Something colder. "Admiral," she said, "the Overmind is hailing us." Tanaka nodded. "Put it through." The Overmind's voice filled the bridge. It sounded different than before. The arrogance was gone. The contempt was gone. What remained was something close to pleading. "Humans," the Overmind said, "we wish to discuss terms. We are prepared to offer reparations for the incident at New Helsinki. We are prepared to return the territory. We ask only that you stop." Sira looked at Tanaka. Tanaka looked at Sira. Neither of them said anything. "We acknowledge that we underestimated you," the Overmind continued. "We acknowledge that we were wrong. We are prepared to pay any price for peace. Please, this destruction serves no purpose." Sira stepped forward. Her voice was calm. Her eyes were not. 4 million people, she said. That is what you killed on New Helsinki. 4 million people who had never hurt anyone. 4 million people who just wanted to live their lives. You did not kill them in battle. You did not kill them in war. You killed them because they were in your way. She paused. My sister was one of them. My nephews were 8 and 11. They died holding each other. They died afraid and confused, wondering why this was happening to them. You want to discuss terms? Here are my terms. Suffer. The channel closed. Admiral, Sarah said, begin the assault. The Terran fleet moved forward. The Vethkai fleet, the last hope of the Dominion, rose to meet them. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was not a fight. It was a slaughter. Human ships moved through the enemy formation like wolves through sheep. Human weapons tore through Vethkai hulls like paper. Human soldiers boarded the enemy flagship and killed the Overmind's personal guard with their bare hands. When it was over, the Terran fleet landed on Kethver Prime. They did not bomb the cities from orbit. They did not unleash plagues or poisons. They walked through the streets, and the Vethkai finally understood. What they had awakened that the humans were not here to conquer. They were here to teach a lesson, and lessons humanity had learned long ago were only remembered when they were painful. The Vethkai Dominion died not with a bang but with a whimper. Humanity did not destroy them. That would have been too easy. That would have been too quick. Instead, humanity did something far more thorough. They took away the Dominion's future. Human doctors moved through the hive cities of Kethver Prime with surgical precision. They found the queen breeders, the massive creatures that spawned new generations of Vethkai. They did not kill them. They sterilized them. One by one, every queen breeder in the Dominion lost the ability to produce eggs. Human engineers found the Padilla warrior production facilities. The vast factories where Vethkai soldiers were grown by the millions. They did not blow them up. They dismantled them piece by piece and scattered the parts across 100 different systems. Human soldiers found the spaceship yards, the fuel refineries, the weapon factories. They destroyed them all. When they were done, the Vethkai could not leave their own planets. They could not rebuild. They could not fight. The Dominion was not dead. It was worse than dead. It was helpless. The Overmind survived after a fashion. Humanity let a small part of it live. They wanted witnesses. They wanted the Vethkai to remember what had happened and why. They wanted the story to spread to every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood before the crippled Overmind on the last day of the war. The vast creature that had once ruled 1,000 worlds was now a broken thing. Its network shattered, its power gone. You called us weak, Sarah said. You called us harmless. You killed our children because you thought we would do nothing. Do you understand now? Do you finally understand what we are? The Overmind's voice was a whisper of what it had been. You are monsters. Sarah shook her head. No. Monsters kill because they enjoy it. We killed because you forced us to. There is a difference, though I do not expect you to understand it. What will become of us? You will live. Your species will survive, at least for a while. But you will never leave your worlds again. You will never threaten anyone again. You will watch the stars and remember that you once reached for them, and you will know that your own actions took them away from you. The Overmind was silent for a long moment. Is this mercy? No, Sarah said. This is consequence. She turned and walked away. Behind her, the Overmind began to keen, a sound of pure despair that echoed through the empty halls of its broken palace. Sarah did not look back. The war was over. Humanity had won. Now came the harder part. Admiral Tanaka gathered the fleet above Earth for the last time. 10,000 ships floated in perfect formation around the blue marble that humanity called home. They had traveled across the galaxy and burned a path of destruction through an empire. Now they had to decide what came next. Some argued that humanity should keep the fleet active. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. Other species would think twice before threatening them now. Strength kept people safe. Others argued that this was exactly what their ancestors had feared. They had won the war, yes. The wars had a way of continuing. If humanity kept its weapons ready, it would find reasons to use them. It would become the monster it had once been. The debate lasted for months. People argued in council chambers and living rooms and street corners. The whole species was trying to decide who it wanted to be dot in the end. They chose the same thing their ancestors had chosen 10,000 years before. They chose peace. But this time, they chose it with their eyes open. They sealed the weapons again. They closed the shipyards again. They went back to their farms and laboratories and hospitals. But they did not pretend that the beast was gone. They did not teach their children that violence was impossible. They taught them that violence was a choice, and that choices had consequences. On the anniversary of New Helsinki's destruction, humanity broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship received it. The message was simple and clear. For 10,000 years, we chose peace. We made ourselves small. We hoped the universe would reward our restraint with kindness. It did not. So we woke up. We remembered what we are. We reminded the galaxy why it once feared us. The Vuthkai Dominion thought our gentleness was weakness. They learned otherwise. We hope the lesson is not forgotten. We have sealed our weapons again. We have returned to our peaceful lives. Our children play in fields and swim in rivers and dream of futures without war. We want this to continue. We want peace more than anything. But we will never forget how to wake up. If anyone threatens our children again, there will be no warning. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. We will come for you, and we will not stop until you are no longer a threat. Not because we enjoy destruction, but because some things are worth protecting at any cost. This is humanity's promise. This is humanity's warning. Let us sleep. The message ended. Across the galaxy, species that had once laughed at humanity sat in silence. The crystalline hegemony quietly adjusted its expansion plans to avoid human space. The Rorvan Confederacy sent diplomats to Earth with gifts and apologies for insults made centuries ago. A dozen smaller species that had considered attacking human colonies suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. The galaxy had learned its lesson. On Earth, life returned to normal. Children went to school. Farmers tended their crops. Scientists studied the stars. The war became history, then legend, then a story that grandparents told their grandchildren. But the vaults remained. The knowledge remained. The beast slept in its chains, dreaming of fire and blood, waiting for the day it might be needed again. Sarah-chan retired from public life. She returned to New Helsinki, where the bones had finally been laid to rest. A great memorial stood where the capital city had been. 4 million names were carved into black stone, a wall of memory that stretched for kilometers. She visited the memorial every year on the anniversary. She brought flowers for her sister and toys for her nephews. She sat beside their names and told them about her year. She told them about the peace humanity had found. She told them about the children who played without fear because of what their sacrifice had bought. And she made them a promise. No one will forget, she whispered. No one will ever forget what happened here. And no one will ever let it happen again. The wind blew across the empty fields where a city had once stood. The flowers swayed. The memorial stood silent and eternal. 10,000 years ago, humanity had sealed away its weapons because it was ashamed. Now humanity sealed them away because it was wise. The beast slept. The children played. And the galaxy watched the stars in silence, knowing that somewhere in the dark, Something terrible was dreaming. Something that loved its children enough to burn the universe. Something called humanity.